Welcome in. It's almost time.
All right, everybody, welcome in another edition of the Sports Hounds here exclusively on A2D radio.com. We're on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram. Miss anything here, download us wherever you get your podcasts, Spreaker, Spotify, Google Play, iHeartRadio, iTunes. Each and every week we are brought to you by Philly Sports Trips, the Philadelphia 5for5 sports travel company, premium travel and tailgating experience for the passionate fans of Philadelphia. Go see our man Vince there. PhillySportsTrips.com. Some Phillies trips left, some Eagles trips getting going. They said, I read online today that Jalen Carter broke one of those blocking sleds at the Eagles' first practice today. So I guess he's adjusting rather well. Also brought to you by Bog. He's a beast. Doug, can you tell that like when a kid like comes up like right away?
Yeah.
Like this guy's got it.
JD Drew, freshman year, college. Different, right?
Yeah.
Different. Joe Mauer, different. You know, I mean, this guy, I'm not Mel Kiper, but damn, like, I don't have to watch a lot of University of Georgia film to realize that your defense is going to be really good. Like, these guys are just different. They're different. That guy, he's going to be defense. I mean, those guys are just epically special. And they're taught right. You can tell who has great coaches. Those guys like that deal with that. Like that whole, like there's a reason why Georgia's defense is good every year.
Well, that's why I get
Kirby Smart, man.
Kirby Smart.
Well, that's why I get accused. I get accused of being an SEC when it comes to the draft time. I'm not Mr. Mock Draft or anything like that, but I get accused of I only want SEC guys. Because they have the best coaches, they have the best facilities. If I'm a corner on Alabama and I have a bad week of practice, guess who's right behind me? Another 5-star recruit that Nick Saban's going to put in the game. He's not going to mess around.
Every all-pro guy in 6 months is behind me.
Correct.
You're just getting reps against NFL quality guys every day. And like, don't get me wrong, for every Jerry Rice, there's 35 SEC guys that come and just another football game. The level's a little faster. The guys are bigger, stronger, but those guys adjust because they had to do that when they got to college.
And then it's like, well, yeah, Georgia lost a lot last year, but we don't even know. Like the new guys might be even better.
It's better. I mean, here's a good example. Like you guys know I'm a diehard Florida State football guy. 2 years ago, Georgia, we got a transfer. I think Jermaine Johnson. He was
Jets now.
He wasn't even in the rotation for Georgia, hence why he transferred. And he was the 20th, 18th pick, whatever it was.
Yeah,
so there's a first rounder, the ACC Defensive Player of the Year, wasn't in their rotation. Like not even a third down pass rusher. And he was a first rounder. So like they forget about that one. Like that's 12. So like you said, like they don't just there's no such thing as rebuilding at those places, they just reload. And that's like I said, they're practicing against quality every single day. The competition within those practices is 90% better than almost every team they play in during the season.
We're also brought to you by Baguio Bread, located in Mount Laurel, New Jersey, home of the best stuffed breads, tomato pie, sandwiches, cutlets, and meatballs. Mention A2D Radio, 10% off your in-store purchase. We got a hockey game on tonight. We got a night in baseball. Phillies have shown up playing the Tigers. Maybe now they get 2 or 3 from the Nationals. They get 2 or 3 from the Tigers. I believe that is a solo home run for Mr.
Somebody
Trey
hit a solo home run. Oh, Turner hit it?
Now, Doug, there was I was listening to the radio a lot today, and they dropped the lineup, the Phillies lineup, and Trey Turner hasn't been hitting the broadside of a barn. He's not getting on base. His power's not there. And the lineup gets released, and he's 4th, protecting Harper. Is that like a ploy for managers? Like maybe he can – I mean, obviously it worked. He just hit a home run. You give him that confidence that he is a good player and he's in the 4.
You try different things. Like the one thing about like struggles, the guys that are struggling or they're new city, new contract, whatever it is. Like the name on the back doesn't change. Like pitchers aren't like, well, Trey Turner is struggling. let me just, here you go. Like they want to kick you when you're down, so they still are. They know who he is. Reputation means a ton. And today's analytic world, 4 is like a second leadoff hitter, and Trey's got enough power to handle that. It's mainly just who's protecting Bryce, and that's a huge thing. Like changing the lineup, sometimes all it takes is to move one spot, and it's crazy because it doesn't seem like much. Some guys don't want to be moved. Some guys, it might make a huge difference, but it does. There is something to that, and sometimes you find something that not necessarily is according to Hoyle or the way it looks when you start to call out the lineup on the first baseline for a playoff game, and you look at it and you're going, I wouldn't do it that way, but it just works. And sometimes a tweak like that can make a huge difference.
Now, it seems like Topper, Phillies manager Rob Thompson, it seems like he's more of a feel kind of a manager.
Very much so.
Obviously, he uses the analytics, but I feel like he trusts his gut a lot. Do you have to do that as a manager?
His gut is different than most, though. His gut, he studies more. I know when I was at the Yankees, he would stay in the clubhouse, and it looked like you thought he was a stockbroker. He had computers and angles and different stuff going on, and he could spit us out stuff immediately. So he's always watching for competitive edges, and that there's people like that, and there's people that know like the inner beings of a person. And Topper does a phenomenal job of both. And sometimes, his gut is probably very well educated in his own, like he doesn't have to explain it because everybody just gives him the benefit of the doubt. I know I did, and I would. Like there's nothing he does is really on a whim. So, it's backed by what he's dug up and what he thinks. And, what he's not afraid to do things that maybe not everybody agrees with if the front office is giving him the freedom to do that.
You say that a lot. The front office giving the manager full autonomy over the lineup card. Mm-hmm. That just seems baffling to me that you're going to hire this guy. He's making, what's Topper making? He's making millions of dollars. He has to be, right? I don't know what his contract is or whatever, but he's probably got a nice little bump from.
Oh, for sure.
There's front offices out there that are like, we like you to pay you this much money to manage our team, but you got to do it like this.
Mm-hmm. I guarantee you there's more managers being told what the lineup is than not.
Like the Rays. The Rays strike me as an organization that might do things.
Dodgers, like there's just, the people that are really analytic crazy, like you can't tell me otherwise. They can tell you everything about, the according to Hoyle answer that, it's a collaboration and, I just had a gut feeling. No, you didn't. You were told. Like you can't tell me anyone who watched the past 3 or 4 World Series. You can't tell me that Rich Hill, you should have taken him out after the 4th inning. That cost the Dodgers a World Series. You can't tell me that Kevin Cash wanted to take out Blake Snell. The number one reason why the Dodgers beat the Rays that year is because they took Blake Snell out.
Absolutely. He had 69 pitches?
No baseball person alive would have gone, okay, you know what? It goes back to like everybody. You don't need to be Casey Stengel to watch a game and realize, hey, this guy's got it tonight, right? Like you guys just know. You watch enough. You don't even have to watch enough baseball. Why would you take him out there? Well, the book said, I don't care what the book says. This is not a marathon. This is a sprint. You need 12 outs to put a ring on your finger. I don't care what the book says. Like my eyes are telling me the Dodgers don't want anything to do with it. The last thing I want to do is give them hope by taking them out of the game. And that happens. It happened like Rich Hill did. It did the Rich Hill a couple years ago. There's no way Dave Roberts, there's no way he wanted to take him out of that game. And and again, there's so many times when yes, those front office guys, they make tremendous, ideas, and they have all the data and all the stuff. Absolutely, they do their job. They find stuff. They do things that other people can't. But at the same token, you have to give the guy you hired the chance to be like, I'm sitting here. I'm sitting on the eject button or whatever you want to call it, the guillotine. I'm not taking him out. I goes back to the 2000 Olympics. I remember Ben Sheets. Ben Sheets was mowing Cuba, mowing. And the teams gave us strict rules on how many guys could pitch. For example, CC Sabathia got sent back from Australia because USA Baseball wanted to put him in the bullpen. And Cleveland said no. So they took CC home. We're like, wait a minute, that guy's really good. Where's he going? So that's the point. And Ben Sheets was getting close to 100 pitches in the gold medal game. And it was like maybe like an out in the eighth. And literally, like Tommy Lasorda grabbed the pitch clicker from Phil Regan and spiked it on the ground and said, I'll handle the Brewers tomorrow. I'm not taking him out of the game. And you're right. You don't get a chance to win a gold medal. And an extra 12 pitches is not going to make or break.
No.
So, like, is there, like, communication between the front office people and the manager, like, throughout the
game? I guarantee they sit down. I know for a fact that the stuff that I've been a part of, like, they're in there every day, before and after.
What about as far as
moves? You have guys. You have to make decisions on stuff. You know, you just maybe not so much lineup, but I guarantee in the playoffs they do. And I know for a fact, like those guys meet every day. You have to, because there's so much stuff, moving parts going on in your organization that you need to have at least, if not the GM, the assistant, or one of his, we call them cronies, whatever it is, someone's in there because you have so many decisions to make on a daily basis, whether it's a AAA guy, who's pitching here, position change here, whatever it is, you're always talking.
What about, like, as far as, like, during the game?
Oh, I don't think it's during the game, but you can get a message downstairs. 100%.
Yeah.
It doesn't take much. You just run the guy down there. Phone rings. I mean, hell, we got iPads in there now.
But that kind of puts you, like, if you're the manager and you don't have full autonomy, you got to go answer those questions after the game if it doesn't work.
Correct. And you can't say,
right,
this was my decision. So that's where, like, again, it goes back to where, you know, you're sitting there, you're holding a grenade with the pin out. Like, I know for a fact, like, you have to say, like, Kevin Cash is sit there and say, no, we want, our bullpen's always been lights out, and we had to take him out. Like, knowing deep down inside, he's like, you know, that's just, again, like, in my opinion, like, you take the data, you accept it, you go over, you can have a plan, map it out before the game. If it goes perfectly, this is what we hope to happen. But you have to have the ability to tell your guy, look, if it's going the way it was going, you 86 that plan and go boom. Like, you know, because you're still messing with, we're not robots. Like, we are humans. We have hearts. We have heartbeats. Sometimes you have your A game. And when you have your A game, you want to play 4 games in one day. You don't ever want to stop. And I guarantee you, it's a shame, because if I'm Blake Snell, I'm like, I had a chance to do something that I haven't had a chance to do since. I had a chance to win a clinching World Series game, throw a complete game and completely dominate and put my name in the history books. And yet some 21-year-old dude who's just read Bill James's book told me I need to come out of the game. And there's something wrong with that.
Hey, Doug, did you happen to notice on Saturday night how Boone took Gerrit Cole out after 80 pitches? And then all of a sudden, like, you know, after everybody's crucifying him for doing that, and, you know, they bring in Peralta, who gets bombed, but the Yankees do hold on and win. But all of a sudden, you know, after like about 2-3 hours, then he comes up and starts saying, well, he had cramps. You know, I think Boone's full of crap. I think he lies. And I think he lied about Judge, because every time the Yankees play, or the Yankees get a day off, he rests Judge the day before.
That's
to give
smart.
him 2 days in a row.
That's what you do with your superstars.
Yeah. I think it's ridiculous, to be honest.
You give them 2. That's what you do. That every organization does that. Everyone. They take their superstar and they give them a day off before the day off or the day after.
But then you screw up their timing when they're off 2 days, don't you think?
No, you got to rest them somewhere. You got to rest them somehow. And
I get it, but I
didn't like it. Gardy would do that to me all the time, and it drove me crazy, because that's how I felt. But like, if I want a break in August, I want it in August. I don't need a break in May. I'm just, But I will say, going back to the Garrett Cole thing, like, I'm all for backing off the throttle on guys early in the year. Like, I don't think Garrett Cole should throw more than 80 pitches during a regular season game. If you throw one,
yeah, but it was a national TV game against the Dodgers. The whole country is watching. I mean, do you really need to do that?
Yeah, because the whole country's going to watch you in October. I'd rather have him fresh in October than captivate the audience in May when no one gives a damn about what happens against the Dodgers in May. You want your horse at the end of the year. You want your horse.
I agree, but the thing is it really going to kill Garrett Cole to throw another 10? I mean, he was mowing them down. The Dodgers, he was basically playing with them. And then you take him out after the 6th inning. To me, the whole thing didn't make sense, and the Yankees really needed to rest their bullpen. So I just didn't get.
That's where I think the game has changed, in my opinion, arguably the most, and it's the AAA moves to the big leagues. Like before, when I first came up to the big leagues, Tom Kelly was our manager. Like we never made roster moves ever, never. I mean, a guy had to have his leg chopped off before he went and got somebody from AAA. And now it's like. It's to the point now where, like, you get guys up and down every day. Like, every day. You get, I need a fresh arm. Because they go right to their pen with everybody. Because if they're going to their pen in the 6th with Garrett Cole, what are they going to do with everybody else, with all the rest of the mere mortals? Like, Garrett Cole's not he's immortal. I mean, he's one of the best pitchers, if not the best power arm, of his generation. He was the first pick, and he's dominated literally ever since. So if you're going to do that with him, that's why there's 3 moves a day with bullpen guys in AAA, because they use 4 or 5 arms every night.
When does it shift as a manager? Like, obviously baseball, 162 games over 6 months. It's a marathon. Mm-hmm. It's dollar cost average sport. When does it become a sprint? Do you have to feel it out? Is it the calendar? Is it who you're playing? How your guys are looking? Where's that balance?
I think you kind of build it. They always say, I don't know, I feel like the good teams, the teams that usually end up playing the longest are the ones that stay the most consistent during the course of the entire season. I don't mean wins and losses. They stay who they are, right? They don't ask guys to bunt in October when they haven't asked them to bunt in April, May, or June. And whether they're winning or losing, their aura is still the same. It's hard to keep your confidence when you're losing. It's hard not to get too giddy when you're winning. But and I think that's exactly what Topper did. Like, Topper came in, flipped the switch on whatever Girardi's mess was doing, and all of a sudden he just kept that positive vibe that he brings, and it stayed true throughout the course of all the way through the World Series. I think that means more than trying to, this game means more because it's later in the year. No, you just, because every game matters. Like, that's what everybody wants to say. Like, oh, it's just a game in April. Well, no, it's not. That game counts just as much as the game in September does. And if you get a group of guys that believe that and trust that and have the same feeling, that's usually the teams that end up playing the longest. I guarantee the Astros they hate losing in April just like they hate losing in October. And they have the same formula. They have pitching. They have their bullpen guys. They wait for their hits. They do their thing. They don't do anything differently than they normally do during the course of the season.
No, they don't. You're right.
No,
they have to do it. And that's the thing, too. Like, people always think, oh, there's 25 guys in a roster, 26, whatever it is. You've got to be 40, 43 deep in your organization to kind of make it through the course of the season. Because you're going to need, the pitching staff has 13 guys, 12, 13 guys. You better have 20 legit quality big league arms somewhere, because that weak link's going to kill you. And then you have competition within yourself, and that's what the Astros. Every guy they bring out of their bullpen, there's guys you never heard of, and all of a sudden they're household names by the end of October. Because those guys are deep. There's not enough room for them during the whole course of the season.
Now we're in the
they are loaded. They are loaded with pitches, as are the Rays.
Rays do it a little bit differently. I think they're really good at finding that guy that still has something left. and make a little tweak to him, and all of a sudden, it goes back to like Grant Balfour back in the day. Like Grant was with us with the Twins. He always had a power arm. He just never could corral it. And then all of a sudden he goes to Tampa, and all of a sudden he's an all-star. And you're like, wait a minute, like he still has the same stuff, but it's better. So it's like,
he was really good. He was really good.
He goes to Oakland as like their closer, and like the whole, everything was amazing. And he just never quite. He didn't hold runners for us. We heard all, he can't fill his position. It's like, yeah, but he throws 100. Like we need guys like that. But it's just amazing. Sometimes guys don't fit, and sometimes it takes guys to get, hate to say it, they have to get whacked 3 or 4 times before they stop doing personality things that keep them from the mound. And that wasn't Grant's problem because I never had an issue with it. I really enjoyed playing with him. But there's you see guys that get, like, look at your boy Hicks. He's rolling in Baltimore. Granted, it's 2 weeks, whatever it is, 15 at bats, but he's doing something. He didn't do that for New York. You get a sour taste in your mouth. Gallo's another guy. Gallo's in Minnesota, and he's got more homers this year than I think he did combined for the Yankees in a year and a half.
Who Hicks?
No, Gallo.
Oh, Gallo.
Gallo, yeah.
Gallo.
And Gallo are 2 examples of guys that didn't really. Aaron had some good years at one good year in New York, but Gallo went over there and looked like he never played before. So,
Gallo, I still can't understand what happened with him. And he just and then when he got traded to the Dodgers, he was just as bad.
Big market.
Yeah.
I can see how some hitters have trouble in LA. I do. It's because he went from Texas to New York, where you can fart a ball out the right center in Yankee Stadium, right? And then you go to LA, where you play a night game in LA, it ain't Yankee Stadium at night. Like you gotta day games are fine, but night games in LA, you gotta murder balls, and they don't go out. So I can see how even guys with as much pop as he has, you still try to hit balls, and like when you're not doing what you think you should be doing, you squeeze the bat a little harder, you swing a little harder. It takes away what you normally do, and then it's like that snowball effect. You can't stop it. So I get it. A lot of times guys are just praying for the year to get over with. I mean, how many times do you see guys have really bad seasons, but they go off in October because they have a chance to wipe away their bad 6 months in a 2 week stint?
Well, all is forgiven if you succeed in the playoffs.
Correct.
That's always been the motto with Yankee fans with the players. If they have a good
October, you're all is forgiven.
Yeah, that's always been like that.
That's like that in almost most places. That's one of my biggest regrets is not doing. I had a great September with New York, and I just didn't get it going. I don't make excuses very much, but I fought my rear end off to come back and play that September, and then I get a camera guy fall on my ankle, and I looked like I had a cankle. Like my ankle was about the size of my thigh, but I was like, I'm rolling. I'm not coming out. I signed here for October. I can't wait. I want to win a ring here so bad, and I stunk. But that's why you play. When you play in October, man, it's not about how many you get; it's when. And that's the beauty of it. One swing can change your life, and that's the beauty of October baseball.
Look, what about because we had Nick Castellanos here in Philly last year, and he good year. It wasn't quite up to the Nick Castellanos offensive standards. First year of a new contract. Now he comes out this year. He's hitting high up in the order. He's got a great average. I feel like he hits a double a night. Is that like an adjustment period for guys like Trey Turner and Castellanos being in the first year of a big contract?
Yeah, I don't know Trey. I don't know Trey personally. I just watched him play. I've actually worked along with Nick. Nick's got a tremendous personality for big market, small market, whatever. He's and I don't mean this disrespectfully, he's a poor man's Miggy, because those two would go at it in BP, launching balls to right center field. And when Nick went to Wrigley from Detroit, I thought he's going to go off because it's a smaller park. And they always get on about, he's a third baseman, now he's a right fielder. And then going to Philly, I'm like, man, this could work out really well because he's got some presence, right? He's got some people with him. it's a smaller park. It doesn't cover as much ground. And right center, he can wear out. So maybe, I don't know. It doesn't seem like Nick wouldn't let that get to him in that regard as far as mentally, as far as Philly goes. So I think he can handle it. I just think sometimes you get a glitch and you can't get it out. But like I said it last year to you guys, I said, mark my words, he's going to have a banner year with you guys this year because he doesn't hitters hit. I mean, he's a flat out. I think he's one of the most underrated right-handed hitters of his generation. Like he puts up gangster numbers, doubles machine, goes back to what we talked about. You put those years he had in Comerica Park in Philly, he's a 35, 40 home run guy. And now you're looking at him in a completely different light. He can hit, and he's a professional hitter, and he's old school. He's right center field fastballs, breaking balls, full side. And I think that balances you out right-handed with Bryce being left-handed and Schwarber. Gives you a presence right-handed too.
Yeah, along with Turner.
I mean, I'm telling you, it's gonna. Like I said, no one's gonna run away with the East. No one's gonna run away with the National League East. And I truly believe that Philly's in that World Series hangover kind of effect, and they'll get going. They'll run off some stuff here but they're not. Like I said, no one's gonna outrun anybody. Like they're all gonna be within reach. And as everything's proven in hockey and in basketball and in baseball for a couple of years now, if you just get in, you're just as dangerous as the next guy.
Which brings us to our poll question. Okay, the poll question is: will the Miami Heat will win the NBA Finals? Agree or disagree?
I'm agreeing. I mean, every time. I mean, I watched Game 1, and it just looked like the Nuggets were just better.
They are,
and they are, but they just don't die. They just have a knack for just doing the little things. They're well coached. They're well put together. And I thought Bam Adebayo was fantastic last night.
Right, both nights. Game 1 and Game 2. He's been phenomenal.
And we were putting my bets in. I put in a prop bet for Finals MVP on Bam Adebayo. Say if the Heat are going to win, he's going to have to play big. And maybe he won't have the numbers. I mean, he has great numbers. He's a rebounding machine. He's a big guy who makes his free throws. He's tough. He's pretty much anything. For my money, he's everything you want in a big guy. But like I said, if the Heat are going to win this thing, he's going to have to do his work on the boards, and he's going to have to stop. I mean, I don't know if you can really stop a guy like Joker when he gets going. I mean, he's a multi-time MVP,
and he's got to make the 8 to 12 foot jump shot. That's and do what he normally does rebounding. That's why I look at. I just hope my gosh, those guys are playing 42, 44 minutes. And I'm tired of hearing like Game 2, right? The Heat win, and it's all about what Denver didn't do, and then Denver won't go to the podium. Like you're talking to the bench guy who scored 4 points. He's doing the post game interview. It's like, wait a minute, like you can't handle, like you didn't play with energy. It's like it's always Denver didn't play with energy. Boston didn't play with energy. It's like it's always what the other team does. It's never like, well, you know why? Because when you keep punching somebody and they keep getting back up and keep coming at you, at some point that demoralizes you internally, right? Like you just keep punching the kid, and he just keeps coming back for more. Give me one more, and you're just like you're tired of punching him. That's my analogy for the Heat. They just keep coming. They don't care. And their will just breaks people. And it's like Game 1, we should have lost. We didn't shoot well. And then, if all of a sudden they shoot well, it's like, hang on a second. Like I've never seen a basketball team where you're down 14 with 3 minutes to go going, hang on a second. Like this ain't over yet. Like, and they just keep coming. And I just think that at some point you need to, it really bothered me that no one went to the podium after last night's game. Like none of their stars. Jamal Murray didn't go. Jokic didn't go. It's like just because you lost one game and your energy wasn't good, you guys refuse to talk about it. Like, first of all, you're a professional. You love – this is what I've always said about athletes in general. Like, everybody wants that giant contract. They want the money, but they don't want the crap that goes with it. And that's – I've always said that, even baseball, whatever sport it is. Like, I don't – like, wouldn't you want to be that? No. Like, I wouldn't want to be that, because now you're having to answer stuff every single day. You want the contract, but you don't want the crap that goes with it when you got to answer questions when you don't perform or whether your team doesn't perform. And that's what kind of bothers me. It's always what the other team didn't do over what the Heat has actually done. And I'm like, that's why I keep quiet. I'm like, you know what? Win game 3 in Miami, the Heat, and you'll see it's like one game and everybody goes, oh, wait, the Heat are going to win. Like, a minute ago, you told me we're going to get swept. So I just think the Heat deserve a little more credit when they win a game. Then it's not always the other team always, folds or doesn't play well.
And it's not the other team not playing well. They're the Heat are relentless defensively.
But there's a will.
They to me, I mean, I'm a Knicks fan. So back in the 90s when they had Ewing and Starks and that whole group, that was a defense team. That was a physical team. They're kind of mean. They're kind of mean, and no matter how many times you punch them, they got back up again. And this team really does remind me of them. And the difference is they don't have to play against Jordan. As good as Jokic is and as good as Murray is, he's not Jordan. So it's not an impossible task for the Heat to beat this team.
I mean, Denver, you look at them like they're just like they're big, they're bigger, they're longer. Like they're a tough matchup because, my gosh, everybody's like they got length on us, but I don't care. Like I think Spoelstra is the best coach in sports right now. Period. There was something else I was going to say about. It's like a baseball team, right? Baseball team is always like, oh, the team lacked. They were dead. They didn't have any energy. Well, there's a reason why, because we just got it stuck up our butt by somebody. The opposing pitcher had everything to do with our energy.
Yeah,
you're getting beat. You're getting 1 or 2 hit. Everybody says, oh, they came out flat and they were dead. Like, no, really, there's really nothing we can be excited about when we're walking back to the dugout every time. So, it just seems like basketball is like you said, their defense is relentless. Like, yeah, they look like they weren't very good because they just keep putting pressure on you to make you look bad. And instead of saying, oh, Denver played bad, can one person finally say the Heat's defense made them look like this?
Yeah, they're relentless. They don't stop. I mean, they bend the rules a little bit. They kind of hit you a little bit. They do a lot of stuff which probably isn't necessarily in the rules. But they're not going to call a foul all the time in the finals. They're going to let stuff. They're going to let certain stuff go that they may not during the season. And you know what?
Shows. Like, their defense is better built for the NBA playoffs than it is the NBA season. That's a great example. That stuff, they'd be all be in foul trouble if this game was in January. Like, they would
but not now. And you know what? And the way they play such good defense, and then they have a couple of guys who can put the ball in the basket, and that's the name of the game. And look, Denver talent-wise should beat them almost every night.
Correct.
They have more talent, but you know what the thing is? They're not as tough as Miami. Miami is more. It's just it's the it factor. They're just.
Jimmy Butler is a throwback superstar. Jimmy Butler could have played in the 80s against the Pistons when he was getting his ass whooped. Like, Jimmy Butler takes on their persona of your best player. And those guys Jimmy's will is his number one thing. They let him be him. And
it rubs off for the whole team.
The whole team is like that. If you're superstars like that, your other players are going to have to be like that. Otherwise, they won't be there.
Do you think that's just in his DNA, in Jimmy Butler's DNA, where he can just turn it on when the moment's the brightest? And
I just think
you play with a couple guys in Boston that were pretty much always at the top of their game when it mattered most.
Yeah, like you do that all year, but it's tough to do all year, right? You can't. It's hard. That's the one thing I've always said. Like, they always told me personally, like, you can't play the way you play in college in pro ball. You won't make it. It's a long season. I was like, well, if I don't, then I'm not going to be very good. Like, how dare you tell me how I need to play? Like, I'll handle that. They said the same thing about Larry. Not that I'm ever comparing myself to Larry Bird. It just came out of my head. Like, they said the same thing about Larry Bird. Like, you can't be diving on the floor every night. And yeah, at the end, it probably cost him a few years towards the end of his career. But, like, that's the way Larry Bird was. He'd go for the ball in the stands, whether it was Game 3 or Game 7 of the NBA Finals. That's just an innate trait that you have or you don't have. And I think if you look at Jimmy Butler's story coming up through, the tough times, that stuff, those are all character builders that you just can't you can't duplicate the stuff that he's been through. What are you going to say to Jimmy Butler as an opposing fan that's going to faze him from what he's been through? And those guys, I dealt with that as a manager in pro ball, and some of the guys came from some really rough areas, and some people in the organization couldn't understand where they were coming from. Like, hang on a second. Like, these kids came from stuff that, like, you think this crowd's rattling them? They're getting shot at going to the grocery store for their mother. Like, the crowd's not going to faze them. Like, they're living on house's money. You can't rattle these kids, and that you have him wrong. So that type of stuff, adversity those guys have gone through their whole life, made something to those. And like Jimmy Butler's like, I'm like a groupie. Like, I'm like 100% in love with Jimmy Butler. Like, I can't get enough of him. Like, I Google stuff on him and read stuff. I'm fascinated with the story, and I love watching him play.
Now, it took him a while to like find a home, maybe because of his personality, the way he is sometimes. It didn't work here.
We talked about that last week. I was like, I was shocked when Pat Riley, picks somebody up, you're like, okay, are you seeing somebody? I thought the same thing. Like, man, he had a hard time in Minnesota, he had a hard time. Chicago, he had a hard time. Philly didn't quite work. And you're like, man, like, what is he a problem child? Like, what is this? And then all of a sudden you're like, I think it's a perfect example of, I think maybe, and I don't know this for a fact, but a lot of places, coaches want their players to be how they want them to be. And I think another thing that Spoelstra does and the Heat do is they find the guys with the traits they want and they let them be themselves. And then all of a sudden you make a borderline good to great player an elite player. Because I guarantee you he's got more. Because a great example is Spoelstra and Jimmy Butler early in their tenure, they got into it a lot. And other places, I think there you go. There's your send him off. He's not coachable or we're having problems, to whereas they don't encourage it, but they allow that stuff to understand it. I think Spo has enough, I don't know what the word I'm looking for, like lack of ego, that he's like, look, I'm okay with that, because that same passion that you've just thrown at me is what I need on the floor every night. And that's something, that's what all great coaches do. They get the best out of their guys, and they deal with how it is to a certain extent when it's for the betterment of everybody. And to me, that's the only thing I can think of is why he didn't work on those other places. Because I heard in Minneapolis he got in a fist fight with, Townsend and the other guy. Well, it's not always Jimmy Butler. Maybe he was out working him. He wanted more out of him, and you're not going to get that out of everybody. So when does that kind of attitude? When is it healthy, and when does it become toxic? Because we figured out the problem here in Philadelphia. The Sixers, Jimmy and Ben Simmons didn't get along for obvious reasons. Ben Simmons, he's a little kitty cat, and he couldn't handle Jimmy Butler. Correct. So when does it become healthy to have that guy in your locker room? And then when is it like, oh yeah, kind of enough's enough? Depends on the front office too. Depends on who drafted him. Is your GM worried about what the owner's going to say when one of your superstar players doesn't like the one you just gave how many million to? Are they willing to admit they made a mistake? A lot of organizations are in bad spots over the course of time because they don't want to be told I told you so, or they don't want to look bad in the public's eye. And yet they'll keep running and hoping the definition of insanity over and over and over again because they don't want to admit they made a mistake. And if you don't like it, toxic is one thing. I think when it's not for the better, when it's personal and you don't get the best and you become an attitude and it becomes to seep into the other players, that's an issue. But I think disagreements during the heat of battle are not an issue. If you're not getting, and it's who has who's back, right? Who likes more? Who you like more? And like, is this going to be Jimmy Butler's team, or we have to be careful with Ben Simmons, right? We're going to coddle Ben Simmons. Well, now look back. Ben Simmons hasn't played in 2 years, and Jimmy Butler's become arguably baby Jordan in the last two postseasons or 3 postseasons. So it all depends on the front office, head coach, who he buys into, who he likes, who he thinks he can build around better or more. And that's the hard part in this whole thing, is that you don't really, you don't have any organization that says you have full, like everybody has each other's backs, they're lying. because it's a lot of long nights and talking and trying to convince each other that no, this isn't the way it should go, or I want this and I want that.
By the way, Trey Turner just hit his second home run of the night.
He's a cleanup hitter
in the 4-hole. So
maybe.
I guess Topper knows his boys more than.
That's a thing. I do it all the time. Why are we hang on a second. Like, these guys are with them every day. I think they know more about their players than I do. So back up Monday morning, armchair quarterback, just relax and just enjoy the show. I do. Trust me, I scream at the TV all the time, and I'm like, "Okay, Ducks, calm down. You're not."
I think with Trey though, like the Phillies, they've had unconventional. Really haven't had a true leadoff hitter since Jimmy Rollins, and that was years ago. So I think everyone just kind of assumed, oh, we're giving Trey Turner $300 million. He's going to hit leadoff every day and hit 330 and 25.
Jimmy wasn't your average leadoff hitter either. I mean, Jimmy was a friggin' Hall of Famer. Jimmy was go deep from both sides of the plate. Like Jimmy's a 25-30 home run guy. So that doesn't, but I get what you're saying. But I think that's another thing. Analytics has changed the leadoff spot. I look back at 2002, Jock Jones for us in Minnesota. Gardy put him in the leadoff hole. He hit 27 homers. It's like, yeah, everybody wants. Do you want Jock to walk and steal second, or do you want to just put it in the second deck? I'm like, one's a point and one's not. So go ahead and let him hit 30 home runs in the leadoff spot. Still, you're up 1-0. So I think that changed it. Schwarber in the leadoff hole, whatever it is. It's just it all depends on how your lineup kind of, how deep are you? Do you have good hitters 8, 9? Well, then your leadoff hitter is only a leadoff hitter one time, the first time through the order. That's it. And then, for example, I like Schwarber in the leadoff hole because you better have your stuff dialed in from the time you leave the dugout, because he will put a hurting on you fast in a hurry. And he might strike out, he might hit a homer, but we all know, and you guys have seen him long enough, he'll give you a professional at bat every single time he goes up there. And if the umpire calls a bad pitch on him, he will let him know immediately, and I love that. Just because you see that at bat matters to him. It doesn't matter whether it's the 7th inning of a 5-run game, or they're down 5 or up 5 or up 10 or October. Like, when they make a call that he thinks is a ball, it bothers him, and that's a good thing.
Well, we being a Yankee fan, just remember Paul O'Neill. He was absolutely dialed in. The score could be 10-0. They could be losing it, and if he struck out, he'd be beside himself. He always played like that.
But the whole team was like, Bernie was like that, but he just didn't break stuff. But like that whole team, and that's the thing that made him great, was like every pitch mattered to them, and that's something that you don't have to show it. There's 2 prime examples. They both cared the same amount. Paul would go back and kick stuff and break the water cooler, and he had his words and emotion on his sleeve. And Bernie was more of a quiet guy, but they both really loved. They couldn't stand when there was a bad call on them. And that's, when I learning this as I coach, like I've never discouraged passion, anger, passion, emotion. Like, you can come air me out. It doesn't faze me, because I know in the heat of the moment, you're just competing. And that's all I ask of you. If you compete, right or wrong, good or bad, I know your intentions are good. And sometimes we say things in the heat of the moment, or actions happen, and it's like, okay, like it doesn't faze me. It doesn't bother me, because I know that they care, and that's all you can ask for.
So, just getting back to the leadoff stuff real quick, it sounds like you're a proponent of the leadoff guy, as long as the guys down low are hitting.
I've had them both. I've had power guys in the leadoff spot. I've had, the Zach Granite's of the world, who I love to death, was the Minnesota minor league player of the year, played in AAA with the Yankees. He, little perfect, like Brett Butler type, right? Could bunt, could fly. I've had both of them. And it's just about like how your lineup and what do you believe in? Like how's your team how's it mold? Like what is your offensive identity? What is it? Again, we don't run anymore, right? And then they made the bases bigger, and the stolen bases come back a little bit, but like after one rule change, you're not going to change the whole complexion of your lineup. And
So what did you usually hit? Second or fifth?
I hit leadoff for 4 games. Gardy put me up there, and I was miserable.
I would think you would have been a good number 2 hitter because you used the whole field.
I hit 3 for Minnesota. I've hit everywhere, but I've hit 9th. Trust me, there was sometimes my rookie year, I think I should have hit 11th. But I've hit everywhere in the order. So it depends. Like I said, it used to bother me when I wasn't hitting third because that's what I was used to. But then you go to the Yankees, you realize, like, look, I'm not gonna hit third for the Yankees. Like, they got Abreu, A-Rod, Matsui, Jeter, the list goes to Posada. It's like, don't be stupid. Like, I'll just hit 8th behind Robinson Cano and be happier, you know what. But there does matter, like, your lineup. Like, they don't run anymore. So, and that's where I think moving Trey Turner to 4th allows him the ability to run. Because if you put him in front of Bryce, you kind of negate him running if it's at all possible, because now he runs. Now not that I really truly believe that they pitch around Bryce Harper only with first base open. I don't believe that. I think if there's a guy at first, they pitch in the same way whether first base is open or not. But that regard of you don't really want. Like, I think you get more of Trey Turner in that regard on one hand if you hit him behind him, because now he can run. Now he can do some things. He can take chances on the bases, where you kind of a little more reluctant to do that when you're in front of, Schwarber, Bryce, whoever. So you can take advantage of things a little more, I think. It just gives them more flexibility. And again, that's what 162 is for. You have a chance to play with things and see what works.
Let's get to some comments here. Great people in the chat for the fan, by the fan here at A2D Radio. Comments tonight brought to you by Creative Window Design Center, serving New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Florida. Fully authorized Hunter Douglas dealer. Contact Jeff, 609-226-0391. That'll be a free consultation. Just tell them A2D Radio sent you over. Wilson's in the house. Ryan Swoop is in the chat. Mike Hayes is talking hockey. Panthers and Heat both win their titles.
Nice, Mike.
Brad, I'll let you attack that. Obviously, the Panthers, it's on right now.
It's only one game, Rob. It's only one game.
Oh, I love the Panthers. I love the way they do things.
Yeah, look, they clearly looked out of sync. Game 1. Okay,
for the Heat and the Panthers are just like the Heat hadn't beat the Nuggets since 2016 in Denver, and I think the Panthers are 0-6 against Vegas in Vegas. So it's like we may have hit our kryptonite here.
Well, the Panthers have found a way each time, each series to win. And I don't know that they're going to lose one of their home. Who says they're going to lose their home games? The Panthers.
No. Yeah.
Okay. So they're down 2-0. They'll probably win their home games. Vegas was not that good on the road during the season, and in the playoffs they've had their ups and downs on the road. So we'll see what happens.
I just find it funny how at that does it really matter if you're at home or the road? For the most part, I think hockey's give me your guys' opinion. Like, hockey seems to matter the least.
Yeah, actually, Doug, it matters the most, and I'm going to tell you why. Okay, you get the last line change at home. When you're the home team, you get the last line change, so you control the matchups. Okay. On face-offs, the other team has to put their stick down on the ice first. And if you ever played hockey and did face-offs, okay, you have a lot more power when you're bringing your stick down.
Momentum.
Yeah, exactly. So that there's an advantage there. So, and of course, you have the fans too. But those two things, in my opinion, are much bigger than any other sport. Other than maybe baseball.
Bruins had the most epic season in NHL history, and the Panthers went up there and we're down 3-1 and came back and won.
Because the Bruins got sloppy defensively. They for whatever reason, after they got ahead, when they lost Game 2, the Bruins, okay, you could see there were telltale signs. They were really, really sloppy defensively. They weren't sharp, and every time Florida got a break, they were scoring. Okay, and then the Bruins went into Florida and they wiped them out twice. And then the Bruins went and they started getting sloppy again defensively and let the Panthers back in the series by losing Game 5. And then, Florida comes home and wins Game 6. And all of a sudden, the Bruins are in the same situation again in Game 7. And once you get to a Game 7, anything can happen.
Anything's possible.
Yeah.
I've always said, they always say baseball's not people can't handle failure. I think it's the other way around. I think people have a trouble with success because they don't know how to handle success over failure. Because success, how many times have you seen people change because they won a game, or they think the series is over, or you have a guy that thinks he's got it licked, and all of a sudden, boom, humbles you. It's like I used to fight that all the time in the minor leagues and over meetings. Like, we can't handle failure. I'm like, no, you can't handle success. And I flip it because it's like no one handles failure well. Like everybody hates it, but it's the guys that get a big contract and then get lazy, right? Or they're starting to do real well and they don't do the things, they don't hang on to the things that make them good, like what you just said. The Bruins just got sloppy because they just thought we're the Bruins or whatever, for whatever reason. That's the way it looks. But I always go back to people have a hard time handling.
Well, they were having trouble. They were having trouble going D to D on passes in Game 6 and Game 7. I mean, and for some reason, Linus Ullmark didn't play well. He succumbed to the pressure as well, and sometimes that just happens. In Florida, everybody wants to make last year they won the President's Trophy last season. Okay, Panthers were a real good team. They got better by making a trade by getting Kachuk.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but a lot of people didn't see it that way because they struggled during the season. But they got lucky to make the playoffs. But once they got into the playoffs, now all of a sudden, everybody seemed to have clicked.
Right.
And their goaltender is playing great. He's been playing great for the entire playoffs. And the fact that the way they mowed down.
One thing, if you get your goalie, I was a Panther fan. Obviously, when I was growing up in '96 when Van Beesbrook was here. I mean, the dude stood on his head for the entire postseason, and he single-handedly carried us to the NHL Finals.
Van Beesbrook always had the ability to do that.
Correct, and he did it. I mean, we literally, if we would score one or two goals at tops, and okay, shut up, please.
Van Beesbrook was one of those guys. If he got hot early, okay, he could carry it all the way. He could carry it all the way through a game. His problem, at least when he was with the Rangers, his problem was once they scored on him, for whatever reason, he couldn't stem the tide.
Couldn't stop the bleeding.
Right. It seemed like his game would go downhill, but he was able to overcome that when he was with the Panthers. And again, it's a little easier to play hockey in Florida than it is to play in Madison Square Garden.
For sure.
Because Ranger fans are just as, if you think Yankee fans are nasty, they're pussycats compared to Ranger fans. Exactly. With the exception of the bleacher creatures in Yankee Stadium, the Ranger fans are as nasty as anybody.
I love that as a visitor and as a home guy. I always thought the coolest thing was the roll call. I thought that was the coolest thing on planet Earth. And I remember I turned around. I forget, I was my rookie year, and I was with the Twins, and I was hitting 230. And I just hit my second homer of the year, and that's June or July. I only hit 2 the whole year, and it was David Cohn was pitching. And Denny Hopkins was playing right field, and he's like, wait till you hear the stuff that's coming out of these people's mouths for me playing right field. And I heard it, and Kirby Puckett, rest in peace, told me about it. He's like, just be careful, Dougie. They say something. I go, all right, there's nothing. My dad ripped on me more as my coach than any fan has ever ripped on me, so nothing anyone says is going to be worse than what I heard at home. So I made the mistake I heard what they were saying to Denny, and I literally was laughing. And I turned around, I looked up there, and I did one of these. I tipped my cap, and boy, that just unleashed hell on me. They just, we got pictures of A-Ball that can hit 2 home runs. Get off the field, McCabbage. And I was like, yes, like this is New York. I go, this is the best. I go, yes, this is awesome. You know, like I just loved it. Like, I don't understand how guys can get rattled over what a fan says. I've never understood.
Oh, poor Danny Heap. I mean, I remember him. He played for, I think he was playing for the Mets. Okay, and they were yelling heap of, Adam. The whole game they're yelling that at him, and he kept turning around, and we're all sitting there, and it's like, this guy's so dumb he doesn't get it. Every time he turns around, you're just throwing gas in the fire.
Make it worse, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I played for the Mets, and I was like, I didn't want to go on deck because I'm so bad. I was like, oh. What Rusty Kuntz? You know what you know what they're yelling about him. Oh yeah.
Yeah, and then he was. I remember when he was with Detroit, Chet Lemon was in center field and he was playing right. So they're all yelling, "Rusty sucks a lemon." Lemon eats Rusty.
Sure.
I mean,
I will say they're pretty damn witty. I'm not gonna. They're pretty
it's amazing that and they do it. Charlie Moore, I don't know if you remember him. He played for the Brewers.
Okay.
He was a catcher. Do you remember there used to be a perfume called Charlie?
Yes.
Okay. They used to sing at him, "There's a brewer that really sucks and his name is Charlie. Charlie." And they used to do it and do it and do it. And you know what? Eventually, like, Charlie started laughing and everybody saw him laughing. And, all of a sudden everybody liked him. So, like, when he got a hit, he'd come out in the outfield and all the Yankee fans were yelling, "Charlie, Charlie." And it all stopped. But he was like, somehow he was able to make friends with the fans. I mean, I think there was a time when he made a diving catch and his hat came off and he was bald. So they stopped calling him Charlie and they were calling him Baldy. And after that, he kept taking his hat off just to encourage everybody to yell that. But see, they were always reasonable. But boy, you get on their bad side.
But they actually have like substance. They're intelligent. Like they had meaning behind why they were original. They knew why. They didn't just randomly pick you. But I'm looking at this, going back to the Phillies. Like, what's wrong? I think the order looks good like that.
Yeah.
Schwarber, Castellanos, Harper, Turner, Lamuto, Stott, Ellis, Sosa, Guthrie. What's wrong with that? I like that.
Well, they can hit. I don't think the hitting is the problem. I think they've really got major problems with their pitching right now. And until Nola and what's his name, Wheeler, really get it going, it's going to be a problem for them.
Well, I think I said that goes back to what we talked about last week about how like they need like the other guys to step up to kind of give those guys a breather because they were horses last year, and like that extra month means something. And I know they're young and all that stuff, but still, it's just like you'd like to be deep enough to where you can kind of bridge that gap to where they're still pitching, but they're not having to lean on so much to kind of get going. So I mean, Nick's got 20 doubles this year. That's not even halfway. You're talking about 50 doubles.
He's crushing it.
Yeah.
Is there anything to the fact that the Phillies last year got to play Washington and Miami 38 times, and now they only get to play them 26 times? Do you think that's going to factor in? Because they were kind of
like anybody else plays them. I mean, like I think it's more fair now. I mean, it's still. I didn't play 19 times. Like I just it's too much.
Yeah, I would agree. I would really prefer not to see the interleague games though. I just don't think it's needed.
I don't mind them if you rotate them, but like I don't like the whole like. I get the whole rivalry thing, but like, the Yankees play the Mets. Okay, I get it. Like, well, the Mets are good. That's a tough weekend, right? It's an emotional weekend. It's a shit show, right? There's people everywhere. The media goes crazy. And then the Twins get to play the Brewers. It's like, well, when the Brewers were good, they get to play the Twins. Or like, the White Sox play the Cubs, and that's a knockdown drag out. You just don't have the luxury of we're like the Rays get to play the Marlins. Well, not all. Usually the Marlins are decent this year, but like in years past, that wasn't exactly a tough series for them. So like it's just I just think it's like the Tigers play the Reds. It's like, well, that's like
Yeah. Does anybody care?
Yeah, that's like I'd rather go watch a badminton game than watch that. It's
Well,
like
I think it helps. The American League East comes to mind because now you got Baltimore, who was getting knocked around the last couple of years. Now they actually have talent this year. They've done some good things with player development, but they don't have to play the Yankees 19 times.
I managed against some of those guys in AAA, and I did not think they were very good.
Really?
I did not think they were very good. They have 1,000% made me a believer, and I admit I was wrong. I knew they would play in the big leagues. I didn't think they would do what they're doing. Not the new wave, but like the Santander or whatever, those guys, Hayes. I saw them. I was like, they weren't tough outs for us when I was in Toledo, and I just felt like big league guy in the American League East, you better be able to hit in the East. Like, you got to be a dude to play in the American League East, and they've done a heck of a job up there, and they're wrong. I mean, they're considering they're in second place right now, right? The East.
Yep.
They're in the middle of it.
They're
how
good.
Bad teams are in the East, like whatever. You might not have the best Red Sox team, you might not have the best Yankee team, but like that's a grind. I mean, you're going up against some dudes every single night. So they're doing. I'm ecstatic at how they're doing. They're doing. Like, those guys proved me wrong for sure.
How long does it like
track record, right? Look, I was looking at this lineup. Your track record has to be huge. Maybe that's what Dombrowski was thinking when he signed Trey Turner. I got to have more offense because our pitching might be a little down. He didn't like going after somebody, but that makes sense to me. You deepened your lineup when necessarily you didn't have to, so to speak. It helps. Everybody needs another guy. Don't get me wrong.
Oh,
but
for sure.
I'm thinking maybe if we're offensive throughout the course of the regular season, it gives us time to go make that move we need to make in July or August to get a pitcher that we might need.
But guys like Trey Turner and Bryce Harper, like guys that good, don't hit the open market. They just don't. It doesn't happen. That's why
it kind of shocked me too. Like LA doesn't sign him back. I was like, hang on a second. Like, if LA's not signing back, like something doesn't make sense. You moved on from Corey Seager to. I thought you'd pay one of the two, right? Because Corey was still relatively young. Trey's actually, I think he's younger than Corey, or about the same age, whatever. You think you'd sign one of the two, right? You have your LA, right? You have enough money to sign one of them. And to me, it's like something. Usually, good teams don't like to go young at shortstop. You want the familiar guy that you already know, unless you have a phenom, right? Unless you have before steroids, the Tatis thing, right? We have a guy who can't miss, whatever. But
well, he's an exception to the rule, though.
Right, but that's not exactly right. Like, if you're asking any manager, you want the steady veteran playing shortstop over the young guy.
Right, absolutely. But sometimes if you have a good team, though, and you have a good lineup, you can let the young guy play and develop, which is what the Yankees are doing with Volpe. And I know that he's only hitting 195, but the guy does have 9 home runs and like 28 RBIs, and
nobody cares about average anymore.
Yeah, I mean he gets a lot of walks. I mean the guy could end up 20 home runs and 30 stolen bases as a rookie. That's not bad. I take that.
Especially when you don't need your shortstop to hit.
No, not if they have everybody healthy.
Everybody should hit, but like you don't need. Judge is a freak of nature. Like what he's doing year in and year out is ridiculous. It's
running through the wall may have not been the best idea though.
But you can't take it out. You can't take it out of him. Like how many times do fans complain about players not playing hard or superstar? He doesn't play with hustle, and then you have the dude, the man of the American League, the guy that's the face of baseball, pretty much running through a fence. Like, if anything, I'd be more mad at Dodger Stadium. Like, will you put a freaking regular fence up? Like, this isn't 1978. It's like Maury Wells isn't playing the outfield anymore. Get rid of the chain link so we can put a pad up there. Almost off like MVP because he wanted to make a catch in right field.
Yeah, that was pretty crazy. I mean, he's like the anti-Robinson Cano when we used to have him. You know, as great a player as he was, boy, he's just way too. He I don't know if he really wasn't hustling or if it was just that he was so good it didn't seem like he was. I
think I told you guys this last year about him. I was like, you can't have it both ways though. You can't have, oh, look how smooth Robbie is and how under control he is. He's under control, he makes a play, and then like when he makes an error, it's like, oh, he's lazy. It's like, well, which one is it? Like, you know, it's like Robbie was just smooth, and like when he made a mistake, it looked worse. But it's like you always want players to be under control and calm in situations, but yet I get it. When Robbie made an error, like, man, it looked god awful. But when he nice and calmly hit a ball in the second deck in Yankee Stadium, like, man, look how smooth that was. It's like you can't have it.
Yeah, no, it's just it's an appearance thing, I guess.
For sure.
But you know, it did look bad. I mean, that's the one thing it did look bad. So
he would go up the middle on a backhand and be like, boom, and turn it and just flick it to me and it'd be 100 miles an hour. I'm like, man, that was effortless.
Yeah. Oh, I know. That was what made you say, "Oh my God!"
It looked like he didn't try. Like, oh, he's not even trying. I'm like, yeah, he is. Did you not see the play before when he went up the middle and was on the other side of second base and threw a BB and they just booted a regular one? But like, yeah, I get a kick out of that when people. I understand it because it does look like garbage when guys that make the game look easy and smooth and slower, when they make a mistake, it looks horrendous.
Yeah, that was some of the issue.
Yeah.
Greg Milakovic, Jimmy stepped out of bounds. The Heat shouldn't have won that game.
Oh, well.
Oh, well. That's what I always say. Oh, well. I guess they didn't have a challenge.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
Too bad.
Yeah.
Brinkman, he'd have the right recipe. Let Joker get his. Stop the other four. Keep them honest. If not, Joker kills you with great passes.
I said that.
Well, Murray can beat you too. He's the other one.
I agree with that 1,000%. I just think and Spoelstra swatched it, right? He's like, no way. Like, you can't tell me that they changed it. Like, let him get. I don't care if he scores 60. Like, their offense doesn't work if he's scoring a lot. Like the backdoor cuts and the guys are wide open. And it's like, yeah, you can live with. I'll let him kill us. I'm fine with that. But they're a prime example. Like Boston was the same way. Denver's exactly the same. If they're not involved in the offense, those guys don't play defense. Not to the same intensity they do when they're making shots. That's, to me, is the biggest issue, the biggest difference between today's players and the players of the past. Players of the past, I feel like if I wasn't getting any hits, I felt like nobody else was going to. Like misery loves company, right? You hit a ball to me, I'm going to catch everything. Because I didn't want to be the only one that wasn't getting hits. But you notice, like Boston did the same thing. When they were making shots, their defense amped up, and they were like all over Heat guys. And even last Denver, it's like their defense, they didn't close out even 2 nights in a row, to be honest with you. Like, it's just another prime example of how it looks. If when the Heat didn't make a 3-pointer in game 1, their defense, oh man, like they can't, they're too big, they're too lengthy. Then they make shots. It's like, well, their defense didn't look as good. So, but I agree with that. Like, it's him passing. Jokic is phenomenal. Like, that's crazy. Like, he makes passes. I haven't watched a ton of Nuggets games, but like I've seen enough of them. Like, it seemed like the guy never makes the wrong basketball play. Like, he's always, like, every pass he makes is the right decision, which is it's remarkable.
He has a very high basketball IQ.
And how many times have you seen 2 centers bring the ball up? Adebayo brings the ball up all the time, and Jokic can too. At 7 feet tall, they just dribble the ball up the court. We never saw that growing up.
Where's the line with that, though, Doug? When you have a guy who can just take over a game, because Belichick in football, he's been notorious for years. Like, okay, Jamar Chase is your best receiver.
I'm taking him out of it.
He's not doing anything today.
Correct. I think basketball's tough, man. When you have guys that can shoot, the way the 3-point shot has come into the game now, and these guys are so much better, you can't double. If you double them, you're dead, because they make one more pass and it's over. Whereas baseball, baseball, you can eliminate a guy. You can eliminate a guy in baseball. Yeah, you can just completely take the bat out of someone's hands if you want to. And you can do it all the time. But it's up to the other guys to make. I already said that with A-Rod. It was like 2007 in the postseason was, everybody was making a big deal that he didn't have a great postseason leading up to that, right? Or 2006 or whatever it was. And I was like, well,
he was never good in the postseason.
No, but that was my
answer
to everything. My answer to like the media at that year was, well, it's not up to him. It's up to us to put him in situations where he can't pitch around him. Like we got the guys in front of him, the guys behind him, like us guys at the end of like the late in the order. If we get on, there's traffic. Now they don't have the freedom to just go ahead and get around them, and that's it's tough because guys put pressure on themselves in the postseason. I get it. But, it's up to the other guys to do that stuff. And I think with basketball, man, it's like you can't double anybody. It's like just let them shoot. Like just let them shoot.
Yeah, you can't let them be wide open from three because they'll burn you for three.
Correct. It's like you got a shot. You got Larry Bird reincarnated, except he's 5-6 inches taller.
I did want to get the Sixers. We all know I like to get on the Sixers because, they're right there every year, and then their best aren't at their best. But Doc Rivers gets fired. They bring in Nick Nurse. A lot of people are really digging it. What can a coach do for this? What can a new coach? What can a new voice? We saw it in Philly with Topper last year. There you go. Made up for that error quick.
What number? Let's go. What number coach is this for Embiid and those guys?
Number coach for what?
Embiid's group.
Well, they had Brett, and Brett, they were doing the scam process where they're just losing a bunch of games on purpose. So he got a long leash, and then they brought in Doc. So I guess this is third.
This is third? Okay.
Yeah.
I just find it, I don't know. I don't know enough about it, but from an outsider looking at Philly, the 76ers, I think Embiid's the problem. He's a second-round bust. I mean, he's had Jimmy Butler. He's had James Harden. It's like he's had some pieces, and like from an outside as a Heat fan that has played you guys in the postseason before, like it didn't. I was like, oh, we're affiliates, no problem. That's a cakewalk. Like they'll win a couple games, but that's it. Like and that's like I see Embiid. Don't get me wrong. It's hard to argue with an MVP. I never was an MVP. Who am I to say that? But I just looking at that, like there's nothing wrong there. He doesn't have like there's something about what he says, like his post game press conferences. You're like, did he just say that? Like that means something. If like that as a teammate, I'd be like, well, what do you say? What me and James can't do it all. It's like, hang on a second, what? Like what did you
do anything?
Right, like you didn't do anything. Like superstars that don't look at themselves in the mirror first and only first, and that's it. Like there's an issue there. Like you can bring in, anybody, James Naismith, whatever his name is, the guy's playing basketball. It's not going to matter. I just think there's something, and that's what I'm talking about. Organizations, you're stuck. Like it's hard to get rid of the MVP of your league, but if he's not going to win you a championship, what are you doing? You've had two legit all pro, all NBA superstars around him, and you haven't gotten out of the second round. Like something's got to give. Again, to me, he's an MVP, but he didn't show up in the postseason again. It's like, oh, he has an injury. Well, who isn't hurt in NBA playoff basketball? They're all. That's a lot on their bodies. I just don't think like I don't see him as a championship center or player. I just don't.
Well, now it's going to look a lot different because you got Tobias Harris. Maybe you can potentially move him now with that big contract. And I like Tobias Harris. He's a good player. He's not a $37 million player, and that's not his fault. All he had to do was sign. All he did was, okay, you want to pay me this? I'm going to sign up.
Why wouldn't he?
He's not a $37 million player. And then James looks like he's not coming back. So, I mean, like Nick Nurse doesn't play shooting guard, and that's what this team kind of needs.
Like I thought Harden was actually better than I thought he was going to be at Philly. Like, but now you just combined a guy who can't play in the playoffs with another guy who can't play in the playoffs. Like that Houston team he had when they were up 3-1, like that was a layup. Like that was, and like that's just when what's his face when Harden was in Houston, they were up 3-1 against the Warriors, wasn't it? When they had them blown out.
It was 2018, I think it was.
He jagged it up. It's like, and that's hard to say with a guy that scored 50 points a game, whatever. But like to me, yeah, he goes after numbers. He doesn't go after wins. There's something to be said about that. Like D'Antoni's offense, like there's points. They score points. You're not going to score 141 points in the Eastern Conference Finals. It's not going to happen. Like you're not going to do that in the NBA Finals. You have to play at some point. I just think you have to take along. Like they have a chance to like toughness. Like where's their toughness? Like I think of Philly. I think of tough. I think of mentally tough. Like tough place to play. Players should be tough. Like I think of like Chase Utley, Pete Rose, Larry Boa. Like Larry, I think of those. Like those guys were grinders. Like they were good, great players, but they had an FU mentality that like this is no BS. Like I'm gonna stomp you and not apologize for it. And I just don't see that in that. I don't see that in the 76ers. I don't see that. They don't take on the aura of their fan base, if that makes sense.
And like, those are the teams
that does make sense because that is a problem with them.
And like
look at all the teams.
They want to relate to players. They want to relate to lunch pail, hard hat, right? You want to relate to the guys that you pay money to go see. You can't relate to Joel Embiid or James Harden. Like James Harden would go MIA all the time, like out of nowhere. That's not to me. That's not what. It just wasn't it's not a recipe for Philly to be successful. Okay.
Yeah, and all the teams that are. I mean, you had the Utley Phillies, Rollins. They were adored. They played hard. Utley was
Worth was an animal, right? He had that aura about him. Like, man, this guy's tough as nails. He'll keep his face in there off everything. Schwarber's got it. Like Harper's got it now. Has always had that intense. You think Jason Worth was like, he was like Philly God. Like you just think that's what I think of. Like that aura, that toughness, that it doesn't matter what you say, what you do, we're gonna do our thing and you can't stop us.
And then the Eagles in the 90s with the Gang Green and Reggie White. I mean, they didn't win anything.
They got it now too. You have Jalen Hurts, like he was a second rounder, wasn't a first rounder, which football matters, right? Well, he was the backup guy, and everybody gravitates towards. The only thing you can't say about Jalen Hurts is that he hasn't been handed anything. Like he had to go get, and then he takes Alabama to a national championship game, and then transfers, goes to the playoff in Oklahoma, then he goes. He sits behind whatever, and then all of a sudden, he can't do this, he can't do that. And next thing you know, he's one possession away from winning the Super Bowl. It's like I don't care what anybody. I'm so sick of hearing like people like, well, he's got a defense. Well, so what? It's like you don't have to be Dan Marino all the time to just wing it 500 million times to be considered great. You do what your team needs you to do, and you do it well, right? That's what that team does. Like this defense the Eagles have now. Like that's what I think of Philly. Like they're gonna eat people. Like it's just gonna be like
they're. I'll tell you what. I think their offensive line sometimes eats people. That offensive line is just unbelievable.
That's tough. Like you think like Eagles, you think run game, tough games. Like NFC East. Try running against them. And they're gonna run you over on the offensive line. They run the ball down your throat. They're gonna run and you can't stop it. That's Philly.
So it sounds like it doesn't matter who the coach of the Sixers is.
I don't think so.
We're just mired in this. I mean, really, we're in the same freaking spot as an organization than when this process started. Mm-hmm. Draft night, I think it was 2016. They traded Drew Holiday. We can't win with Drew Holiday. Well, okay. Well, all these other teams, it goes to Milwaukee. He's winning championships all the time, playing a whole hell of a lot more basketball than they are in Philadelphia. You get Nerlens Noel. You just make bad choice after bad choice. I think an ownership problem is an awful problem here with the Sixers. I think you got a guy in Josh Harris who, we're good and we won, but let me look at the bottom line to see how ultimately successful we are. And now he owns the Devils and he owns the Commanders now. So he's just kind of paper chasing. I think that means a lot too. So basically we're stuck again. in Philadelphia because you can't trade Joel Embiid because you're going to trade him for a bunch of draft picks. That's what happens in the NBA. And guess what? Those draft picks aren't going to be good because Embiid is going to pile up wins for you in the regular season. So those draft picks are going to be later in the draft anyway. So now Daryl Morey, who I don't like even a little bit, you talked about that toughness. You know, he goes out and gives a 38-year-old guy who used to be good, PJ Tucker, you know, $10 million a year for 3 years. He's going to be 41 when that contract.
I like that pickup, though, because I thought it gave you a little bit of a snarl. What you guys needed, I felt, because he was with the Heat the year before. And I was like, this dude like looks like, you know, I think I have a soft spot for older guys, like in athletics now that I'm older.
Right.
So I was like, well, he gives you, he's intense. It's a good thing, but it's.
Yeah, but it's like 4-on-5 offensively when he's out there. That's the problem.
Yeah, but you can say that about a lot of teams. You know, it's like
that's true.
Al Horford isn't exactly Michael Jordan, but he can knock down threes.
He is against the Sixers.
Well, I think everybody is for the most part against.
Well, yeah, because they don't play perimeter defense, which I've been saying for 10 years now.
Right.
I mean, bring in Harden, that's great. He just stands there and
watches. The guy who has verbally said, "I don't like playing defense." Like,
if he says that out loud, what do you think he's thinking in his head?
Right.
But his closeouts, like you watch the Heat close out threes and these Nuggets and the Celtics, they close out threes. They get their hands up, they run at the guy. James Harden just, there goes another one. I
always say you can see a lot about a team and how their makeup is in basketball. Like you watch fast break layups. How many guys are running after that, or like are you just going to give up the layup, or how many guys are going to go and try to make a difference? It's amazing to say that in a postseason scenario, but like the Heat never get outrun down the floor because they know if they don't get down there, they're not going to play. Like no one's outside of Jimmy and Bam. Everybody in that team is pretty much replaceable, as much as let's just say financially right now, because I think there's a lot of guys on that team that are going to make a shit ton of money soon because they're playing their what's off, and there's something to be said about that, about chips on their shoulder. Like that's a huge thing. Like everybody goes back to Jimmy's story. He was never the high profile Street and Smith top 3 basketball player. Like I followed Duke, but like Jason Tatum, like you get Gatorade commercials and everything else, but you never finish anything. You disappear in fourth quarters. You had one fourth quarter. You disappear for halves. Superstars don't disappear for halves in playoff games. He'd go from scoring 20 in the first half to he didn't even know he was on the floor for the next 2 quarters. And like that stuff, like it's hard I get it. Today's athlete, it's really hard to preach defense if they've never seen it. And that's what makes what Spoelstra does so amazing, is the fact that Pat Riley's still doing it, and he's, I don't know how old he is, 70 something, and he still has that aura, that stigma of he brings guys in for the right reasons and they buy into it. If you're not, you're gone.
So basically, it doesn't matter who the coach of the Sixers is, which is kind of where I'm at too. The players on the floor I don't want to say not care, because they care, but I don't know. It sounds like you're not impressed with the winning mentality that's been perpetrated here in Philadelphia.
Yeah, you are winning, but like, aren't you tired? Like, you can't just, if you're the 76ers, in my opinion, you can't rest on your laurels of getting to the second round, and that's good enough anymore. Your baseball team just went to the World Series. Your football team just played in the Super Bowl. Your football team's set to go to the Super Bowl, arguably has a chance, breaks, whatever, can have a chance to win the Super Bowls over the next 3 years, at least, right? That window. The window you guys have is what, 2 to 3 years probably? Cap-wise, all that stuff. I'm not that familiar with your team, but like Phillies, they have a chance to be consistent for like another 3 to 4 or 5 years. You can't just, to me, Philly's not a town where it's like, oh, you made the second round again. That's cool. No, you're old news. Like, you just went to the World Series. Your football team went to the Super Bowl. That's not enough. You have the MVP, and you're still stuck in the same predicament. And that's, too, like having an owner who doesn't get – because everybody wants to blame the coach or somebody for, let's just say, a failure. But, like, now you're starting over again. You have a new scheme. You have a new verbiage. You have a new, way they do things. So now you're starting over from scratch again, which, it's not that easy to just, keep, because I don't care what coach it is, and if they have the same exact scheme, they see it in a different light. They see different style of players that they want to make changes. And you can't just consistently keep making changes and expect any kind of continuity.
And then, I don't even think Doc was the biggest problem here. And not last year. I mean, I have my beefs with Doc sometimes, but if I were to pinpoint, scapegoat something on why the Sixers lost again to the Celtics, I wouldn't really put Doc Rivers at the top of that list.
It's too easy to blame coaches when it's like, when you think about it, and I heard this today. I heard this on the way over here. It was like they were talking about effort. Forgot what sport it was. We're talking about effort. It's like if you're in like a professional sport and you're waiting for the coach to bring your effort, you have the wrong players.
Right. It's like a pep talk before Game 7 or the Super Bowl. Like, you need a pep talk now.
Right. Like what can I possibly say that's going to change your effort level now? Like, you're playing for what every kid in the world wants to play for, even the playoffs. And I have a hard time doing that in a regular season game. Like, still, you're like, professionally, this is your job. College, you don't play that many games. Like, if I have to, the one thing I refuse to coach is effort. I can't. It's physically impossible. You either want to give effort or you don't. That's defense. Defense, you don't have to have any skill set to be a good defender. It's a will. It's will and effort.
Absolutely. Players can play better defense.
Without question.
It's wanting to do it, and a lot of them just don't want to do it. They're more worried about scoring.
Correct.
Right.
If they put more price tags, and it goes back to just how the pay structure is of every sport. Baseball, you want to change it? Pay someone who plays knockout, drag out defense. Pay them $22 million a year. And stop just paying for home runs. Stop paying for scorers in the NBA. Pay the defensive guy just the same amount of money you want to pay the scorer. If you really want to put an emphasis on it and change the way these guys think, because they think, if I score, I'm going to get paid. Defense, play defense in the playoffs. And that's not how this works.
Now, you mentioned the Phillies went to the World Series and then the Eagles went to the Super Bowl. Are athletes cognizant of what the other sports teams in the city are doing? I mean, the Bruins were really good when you were there. The Patriots had Brady when you were there.
I think of Minnesota. I think of we went to the ALCS. The Timberwolves went to the Western Conference Finals. I know that because Sam Cassell was there, and he went to Florida State also. We got to know each other pretty well in Tallahassee. And the Vikings were, one field goal away from almost like a couple of years earlier. They missed the field goal going to the Super Bowl. So, it matters. You definitely want to keep up, and you definitely want to, it's a pride thing. You're the athletes of your city, and you want to represent the right way and go from there.
Absolutely. Doug, I guess the question is this with Embiid. Is it a scheme thing, or is it just that he because I don't get it. They should be he's the kind of guy, if the Sixers would have gotten him the ball and like it's foul line extended, okay, and let him work his way down, even if they would have to double team him and foul him almost every time. Right. How come that doesn't happen?
I don't follow enough of that during the regular season, but it just seems like something always happens. He just doesn't seem like he should in games when you need him the most. And I don't care, I don't care about points. I know that sounds crazy, but points, there's more to it than just points. There's more to it than just, he scored 40. Well, okay, but how many did you give up? It's like, I do understand you have to score to win. I get that part of it. Winning is more than, when your team needed you most, what did you do? Did you get the stop you needed? Did you, you can score points in the NBA and not score meaningful points. You really can. I mean, I mean, Jason Tatum did it, the Heat series. The first quarter, first half, he scored 20, and then you wouldn't see him again until like 3 minutes left in the fourth quarter. He'd make a free throw.
So we have somebody. Mean Metal Mike wants to know, how good was the 2007 Mets?
I think who was on that team? Let me think.
That had to be Reyes and David Wright.
Oh, it was the same group. I was there in 05. So they had Reyes and David it was their rookie year. We had Pedro, Tom Glavine. So I'm trying to think of who was left over from that.
Probably Beltran.
Beltran was there. I love playing with Jose and I love playing with David. I really enjoyed playing alongside those guys. They were talking about energy. Ray's energy was through the roof every night. That's another thing. It's infectious, right? That's where young guys can infect that kind of. Jose was always smiling and, run around like road runner everywhere and could, had a cannon and hit from both sides. Carlos was steady Eddie, right? Same demeanor. No matter, you don't know if he just struck out 3 times or if he get it through an homer. It was a crazy dynamic group we had, and Piazza obviously behind the plate. So like the Mets are I always felt like, why aren't we should be winning more than we are. I know how I felt in 05, and I was awful. I was terrible that year. But it just seemed like, man, like we should be better. We made a run, I want to say mid-August, we made a push that year in 05. And I'm trying to remember what 07, because we played them in interleague.
I think that was the year. Wasn't that the year Beltran took strike 3 from Wainwright to end the game?
That was 06.
Oh, that was 06? Okay. So
because the Rockies went in 07.
Okay.
And I'm looking at the roster here.
Rockies played the Red Sox in 07.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
And the Rockies beat, I think, St. Louis, right? Something like that. Arizona.
Yeah. Yes.
This was 07. That was the first year that the Phillies, with the Howard, Utley, Rollins crew, they made the playoffs. Remember the Mets collapsed? There was great collapses that always bring a smile on my face as a fan. And the Phillies, they just weren't ready. And the 07 Rockies, I mean, they were just one of the best teams.
They could mash.
But like they didn't strike me as a good team, the 07 Rockies. They were just
hot at the right time. Hang on one second. They got hot at the right time, for sure.
And then they ran into the 07. That was the second.
That was the second Red Sox.
That was the second Red Sox series, and the Red Sox were just loaded. But yeah, I mean, I have the 07. I mean, the 07 Mets. I mean, they were loaded. LaDuca was a good catcher. Delgado looks like he had 25.
Yeah, they had Delgado. Delgado because I know they brought him over from the Marlins.
Toronto. Yeah. No, it was the Marlins or Toronto?
It was the Marlins because I know I was supposed to. It was 05 when the Red Sox traded me in 05. It was held up because it was where they were waiting on to see where Carlos signed. Carlos was either going to sign with the Mets or the Marlins, and whoever he didn't go with, I was the backup plan. And I was praying to God he went to the Mets, just because, no disrespect to the Mets at the time, but I wanted to play in Florida at home. And he chose the Marlins. He signed with the Marlins, and then the next year the Mets traded for him, which I don't blame him because he could flat out play. He could hit.
I mean, this wasn't. I mean, 07. I mean, it's kind of a long time ago. It's 2023 now, but look at these averages. LaDuca was 272. I mean, the lowest average on this team was 260.
Was that Benny Agbayani? Was he there on that team? Agbayani in 07? Or was
he still with them then?
No,
he was before that. So he was like earlier than that with Piazza and Zeal and all those guys. So I'm trying to think of who else. Andy Chavez was on that team. I played winter ball with him 07. Chavez.
Yeah, he was on the team.
6.
Yeah, Andy Chavez was on the team. 287
defense. Holy moly.
287.
Let's catch him in the World Series. I saw him make that same exact catch like 5 times in winter ball in '99. Blown away how good he was defensively.
That catch he made in 2006 in the playoffs was unbelievable.
Amazing. If they win the World Series, that if they get in the World Series and win it, they'll remember that. They remember the catch anyways, but it would be played a lot more often if they would end up winning the whole thing.
Yep.
Moises Alou, he was 40. Wow. He was 40. He hit 341.
He could flat out hit. He's probably 65 right now, and he probably hit 280 in the big leagues because he could hit a fastball with anybody.
Sean Green, Carlos Beltran, and Moises Alou was your outfield. Then you had
squad. They did have a squad. Mean Metal Mike. You're right. Damn. I forgot how many guys they had. What was their pitching staff like?
They had Glavin. Oliver Perez was pretty good.
Pedro.
El Duque.
El Duque was on that team?
Apparently, yeah. I don't remember it being a mess.
He must have been in the bullpen by then.
My iPad died. Otherwise, I'd be looking this up too. But
Shanhill Park. I mean, their offense, they had Wagner at the back end.
Oh, there you go. I forgot that. But yeah, because I know that was the one thing we kind of lacked. We had Roberto Hernandez, who did an amazing job. Braden Looper.
There's Pedro. Pedro was on that team. Yep.
And then Pedro came to the Phillies. I remember we faced him in the playoffs in 09.
09, yeah. He saved Cole Hamels. I mean, he kind of a little disappearing act in 09, and Pedro started game 2 and pitched well.
Yeah, he did. He pitched well
except when he faced Matsui.
Yeah, he started game 6 and they lost, but I don't know. I think the Phillies just ran out of steam that year. They just didn't have – they had Lee at the top, and nobody really stepped up behind him.
I was blown. For some reason, I saw Cliff Lee really well. Man, I saw Cliff Lee really well.
I mean, you probably faced him a lot when the
I faced him young too, but he was damn.
Doug, what made him so tough?
I don't know because short arm. I think he reminded me of like Chuck Finley, Chuck Finley, left on left. Cliff wasn't that. Unless he learned something. I got him early, so maybe he learned something later when he went to Texas and you guys. I just thought, I never ever pat myself on the back or very humble, but he was the only guy I ever said I'm going to hit a home run, and I did. Because I remember I missed a pitch in Cleveland, and I told Kenny Rogers, I'm like, if he throws it again, I'm going to get it. He's like, yeah, right. I'm like, you can't hit it. So anyway, but I just felt like he had angle, short arm, a little cut maybe, but I could see how he'd be nasty on righties because it was short arm and it got on you, and that postseason it looked like he was pitching from 35 feet and everybody else was pitching. You know what I mean? Like that postseason run, it wasn't about how many they're going to score. It was if they're going to score. I think vividly of the pop-up that came back to him. I don't know if that was he was with Philly or Texas. Someone took a full swing, had a pop-up back to him, and just
he just caught it. Yeah, it was with us. That was an 09.
Monday, family game, softball game, and he just matter of fact, yeah, okay, I caught it.
In Yankee Stadium.
Right. Just
he did the same thing.
Yelling at him.
He did the same thing. He did the same thing to the Yankees when he was with Texas the year before that. And it's just it seemed like his ball didn't move all that much. I could never understand what was it about him that.
I think he would. If you measured his stuff out today, I think his spin rate. If you want to talk about the 2023 terms, I bet you his spin rate was high on his fastball. I think we call it deception. They call it spin rate. It got on you, and it didn't. It stayed on the same plane. It didn't kind of fade. He had tremendous control, and he could throw it where he wanted to. And he pitched in. He was not afraid to pitch in, and that's something that it's easily. Everybody says it. Not a lot of guys can continually do it, and he could continually pitch the ball inside.
See, now SJM 86, and we appreciate him watching, but these kind of comments they he's not watching the game. Nola gave him another 3-run home run, looked good most of the game. Aaron Nola had a no-hitter in the 7th inning.
I didn't say it because I looked at it. I didn't
say it either. But even when he got a couple guys on, he walked someone, and then Sosa made an error at third, and then he hung a curveball, and it got hit out of the park. But Aaron Nola pitched fantastic tonight. Now they still got a little bit of work to do. They're up 8-3. I think it's the 9th inning.
When you have a big lead, you're trying to throw strikes. I mean, doesn't that kind of change the outlook a little bit for the pitcher? I mean, the pitcher's trying to throw strikes and just not walk somebody and give up a free base.
I wanted to ask manager Doug, like, well, because it's getting into the 7th, he's getting near 100 pitches, but he got a no-hitter. I couldn't say it at the time because I'm not going
to. I always said this. Like, I don't know what to do. Like, what do you do? Like, Johan Santana. Johan's never thrown a no-no. And
it's hard.
He threw a no-no, obviously. He threw a no-no, and, like, he threw a billion pitches to get it, and he wasn't the same after that. And it's like that's like one of those things as a manager where everybody else is like at the nail wanting to get it done, and you're going, oh, this is not. You're not wishing to get up and hit. Like, okay, this is becoming that.
You're ever a part of a no-hitter, Doug?
Like as a coaching staff, like you're like, I'm screwed. I don't know what to like. Not that you don't know what to do, but you know what you want to do, but
no. But if you take him out with a no-hitter, then they're going to throw beer on you from the rafters. And if you leave him in to get the no-hitter and he coughs it up, everyone's going to be like,
the same guy that's going to throw the beer at you for taking him out will be the same guy that hits you with a handle of whiskey if he hurts his elbow the next start because you left him out there too long. And then the GM will get mad, the owner, and you'll be in the stands with the guy throwing beer at people because they fired you because you just got your ace hurt because he was throwing a no-no and he ran out of pitches. So
that's what happened with what's his name? Who was it? Corey Kluber when he pitched the no-hitter for the Yankees. Mm-hmm. It's like after he did that, he was never the same pitcher. Like he come back and
talk about Garrett Cole throwing 80 pitches. Like, what do? Do you like? Okay, you threw a no-no. Okay, you're skipping a start. Like, why? Like, I'm rolling. I want to get back out there today. I'm like what do you do? Like, I always think about after a World Series run. Like, if I was a manager and if I had 4 or 5 starters that went deep into October, how can we fix this? How can we do this to where we have our guys rest through? Give them another month. Do we have enough depth in the organization to where we can throw, let's say, start the season with 4, 5, 6, 7, 8? Do we have enough to where we can pull that off? To where I give 1, 2, and 3 an extra month of no work to where I have them July, August, September. And it's like, how will you pull that off? How would you pull that off with a fan base? How would you pull that off through the media? How would you pull that off to a front office of, we're going to go with starter 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And we're going to let 1, 2, 3 rest one more month.
I guess depends how many games you win with the 4.
But that's like when you know in your heart, like you're doing what you think is the correct thing for the guys. That's where the line is drawn as a manager versus an employee of the organization. Because you know in your heart, like, there's only so many bullets left in those arms. And do you use them up? Like, I saw a game today, a college game. Coastal Carolina had a freshman throwing. He threw 99 pitches on Friday, threw a no-hitter on Friday, and he's throwing the regional final today. Kid's on 17, 18 years old. He threw 100 pitches, and he gave him 2 days rest, and he started him and threw 50. It's like, whoa. Like, at what point do you have to protect themselves against themselves? And, like, what do? You're being paid, you use up all the bullets, or do you try to protect them where you have him for longevity? But then you go back to Strasburg, and the Nationals were protecting Strasburg for everybody else if you weren't going to pay him. Like, you're protecting Strasburg so the Yankees can sign him, or the Dodgers, and that is not happening. But the idea is you can protect your guy and try to keep him healthy, and you're going to give him away, or someone's going to sign him for $200 more million than you're going to give him. So that's the web you weave, kind of go back and forth, going, what's the right thing to do, what's not.
Were you ever part of a no-hitter, Doug?
Oh yeah.
Whether it was,
I had one thrown against me in college, and Eric Milton threw one in 1999. But
was
99 or 90? 99.
for the Twins.
Angels.
Jesus.
Not yet.
Billy Wagner, me, Metal Mike. Wagner hated playing on the Phillies. Didn't really work out for him here. He was good, but Billy just didn't get it here in Philadelphia. Like when he would throw 99 on the gun, like everyone would boo because they wanted to see him throw 100. Like he didn't get it. Like he's like, why are these people booing me? I got 40 saves and I'm throwing gas every night. He just didn't get it. And I don't know what his stats were for the Mets. I'm sure he was good. I mean,
Oh, he was great.
Is he in the Hall of Fame, Brad?
I don't think so yet. And he should be.
He should be.
I think he should be. Got how many? I know he's got over 300 saves.
But Papelbon, he leads the Phillies and the Red Sox in saves. I don't think he's in.
But how many totals does he have? He doesn't have the longevity that Wagner does.
True. I love our Hall of Fame debates. Me and Brad, we've had some great ones over the year. I'm pretty stingent on my standards for the Hall of Fame. Like if we have to debate it, like you probably aren't a Hall of Famer. But then they let these guys in that are borderline, and then it opens the door for
yeah. I mean, I can see that. I mean, I can see how guys are. I don't know. I just feel like there's some guys out there where you're like, if you let those two guys in, like what about how do you draw the line?
Right, like Dale Murphy. How's Dale Murphy not a Hall of Famer?
Right.
I don't get it. Like Harold Baines is in. All due respect to Harold Baines. I mean,
and that's the thing. When you're downplaying somebody, you're talking about like I don't think like Scott Rowland. Really? Like I don't. Like,
good player.
Great player. Phenomenal player.
Yeah.
But like Hall of Famer? Like solid player. Like that's where sometimes you're talking about Scott Rowland now. You're talking about there was a complete baseball player. Complete. Great teammates. Could defend his brains out at third base. Played a premium position. Third base is not easy. And he was consistent. So like in that regard, he is a Hall of Famer. He did it for a long time. And he never had a wow year, but every year was just boom. You knew what you were going to get. Hell of a teammate, grinder, play the game right, play the game hard. Amen. So like, but everybody you ever talked about the Hall of Fame is all about numbers. Numbers this, numbers that, numbers. They're the numbers. You're like, well, you know, like I think, you know, arguably you're looking at catchers. I mean, you could make a case for Posada. You can make a case for Veritek. Hell, you can make a case for AJ Przinsky. I mean,
you can make a case for Bauer too. I mean,
you look at AJ's numbers. Like AJ, if you look at AJ's numbers, they're close. You know, it's like Torrey. I think Torrey's a Hall of Famer.
Torrey Hunter was terrific.
I think Torrey Hunter's a Hall of Famer.
Really good.
Well, I don't get but where do you draw the line? Like, you know, then you have, you know, Reggie Sanders, 300 club. That World Series, you know, it's like, well, that's the problem. It's like, and again, it's supposed to be hard. It's supposed to be hard. You're talking about the tip of the sword, like it's the elite of the elite, and it's that. Well, where do you draw the line? At the end of the day, I go back to I'm from the old school, and if Pete Rose ain't in the Hall of Fame, and nobody should be in the Hall of Fame, in my opinion. I mean, dude's got 4,256 hits. Like, say that again.
Well, the Hall of Fame should be more like the Hall of Hypocrites, because I'll tell you what, they've got everything so messed. Ty Cobb was the biggest asshole to ever play baseball. Okay, and he was probably the dirtiest player to ever play baseball, and they never had a problem putting him in the Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
and then they don't let guys like Todd Helton and Larry Walker in because they played at Coors Field. Larry Walker might have gotten in.
Larry Walker got in.
Yeah, Larry Walker.
You let Larry Walker in. Todd Helton should be right behind him. I mean,
Todd Helton won a Gold Glove every year.
Amazing hitter. You know, but again, you're talking about how do you draw a line? Like, where do you draw a line? You know, look Manny, granted, you know.
But like Nolan's in now. I know you played with Bobby Abreu before. You speak highly of him. Like
Bobby's numbers, if you look at Bobby's numbers and compare to guys that are already in, Bobby should be on the cusp, if not in. But because Bobby was quiet and didn't do anything, didn't say much, you know, that's where, like, is it a popularity contest? Obviously, it has something to do with it. But, like, Bobby just played the game. He didn't say anything. He was never in the media. But you look at the back of Bobby's card, and there's some phenomenal seasons in there and consistent as hell.
I think Jimmy Rollins is a Hall of Famer.
I agree with you about that. I mean, as a shortstop, his numbers were outstanding.
I mean, Gold Glove every year.
You know, it's like again, they don't want the club to get too big. Well, you're gonna have to draw some pretty nasty lines. And like I said, J-Roll, in my opinion, he should be one. Anybody that puts those numbers up playing shortstop, sorry, you're in. You're in.
Well, Doug, you look at how long it took them to put Tony Oliva in. I mean, Tony Oliva was unbelievable.
Correct.
He was, I mean, I remember as a kid watching him. That guy was one of the best hitters I ever saw. I used to dig big holes in the batter's box when I used to play in Little League just to do the same thing he did. And everybody used to scream bloody murder at me for doing that. But, you know, I did it because he used to do it. I figured, okay, maybe I can hit like him if I can dig a deep enough hole in the box.
And he's one of the best human beings on the planet. Like, there you go. Jim Tomey's not in the Hall of Fame.
Jim Tomey's not in the Hall of Fame.
Like,
seems like, I don't know if you know him or not, but
I mean, to me, that he's without a doubt. Like, he's
Hall of Fame person, and he was pretty good at baseball too.
Correct. Like, as the one guy I remember when he signed with Philly, I was like, oh man, he's gonna hit 100 homers.
That was like,
he's gonna hit 100.
They were like right there. They were like right there, and they had Howard coming up, but they signed Tony.
He hit, like I said, all those years in Cleveland, man. My goodness gracious, like, he's awesome. Obviously the dude, but man, his numbers are what, 600 and some odd, 650 something homer wise.
I think it was 612. I might be wrong, but
I think I'm a little high. But
he definitely has 5. I know he has 5.
I know like I said, he flat out hit. But you know, if David's in, he's in.
And Beltran should be in.
You can't. It's like I'm biased because like there were like I played at the same time they did, so you kind of want all your boys.
Right.
You want the most possible to get in, but I go back to Veritek, Posada.
612. Good job, Brad.
Was it 612?
612.
Nailed it right on top of it. 612.
And Jim Tomey is in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, see, I'm pretty good. I just looked it up just now, but I seem to remember 612.
He went in a couple years ago. I think he was the only one that went in.
Oh, that's right. Because that's right. I got invited to go there and I didn't go.
Yeah, he isn't. He is in for sure.
But I mean, you can go on and on about, is Buster Posey a Hall of Famer?
Yes.
Why?
Because as a catcher, to put the numbers up that he put up, are Hall worthy.
But Doug, at some point, it has to be like, I watched him play, and he was a Hall of Famer. He was the best catcher in baseball. I mean, the Giants won.
It's so great because they had to change the rule of the home plate collision. I'm just asking because does 3 world championships help him?
Oh, sure it does.
Should it not? Because he hit 6. I don't know. But
Posada, the problem with Posada was that he was not a great defensive catcher. He had a great arm. He threw a lot of people out, but he was kind of a windshield wiper behind the plate, though. And I'm a Yankee fan, so
I get it. But it's like it's hard to argue when you're catching Bumgarner. Like I'm a Buster Posey fan. Like I think he's a Hall of Fame person. He's put up Hall of Fame numbers, but like you're just playing devil's advocate here. It's like this, like Okay, he caught a pretty damn good staff too. Like, so was
Oh yeah.
you know what I mean? And that one thing I love is he played a lot. He played, if he wasn't catching, he played first, right? He wanted to be out, didn't have the DH. If he'd have played, if he played today in today's rules, he probably would have played 4 or 5 more the DH in the National League.
But I mean, like,
And
where do you draw the line? Where do you draw the line with handling the staff? Like with Madison Bumgarner and Tim Lincecum and all those guys, would they have been the same pitcher with not Buster Posey handling them?
I don't want to downgrade the catcher, but those guys are pretty good.
Right.
To be offensive and to be able to do that is huge. Don't get me wrong. But like, my point is there's a lot of good defensive catchers that probably could have done the same thing with that staff, but the fact that Buster did both was like the focal point of their lineup and catching these dudes. I get it, but I understand. I'm just making the argument for the other ones too, because Posada's got 4 rings. You know, this defense doesn't matter because Tomei and David Ortiz are in. You know, it's like you have to be exceptional. But like if you look at, I'm not really sure about Buster's career numbers. So I still think he retired. Who am I to argue? But like as a baseball fan, I would have liked to have seen Buster Posey play like another 12 years because I liked watching him play. But I think, you know, he called it quits early because, you know, came comeback player of the year a couple times, has other things he wants to do, more power to you. But like, does his lack of longevity hurt him?
I have his stats right here. I mean, 12 years. I mean, it's
a long time.
2020 he opted out because of COVID.
Correct. Two young daughters decided to opt out.
So he hit 300, 302 for his career. I looked this up, so this isn't from my brain. Okay.
I have it right here. Yeah.
You're Rain Man if you can spit this shit out.
Well, I knew Tomei, but Tomei was kind of easy because, you know, I'm a memorabilia collector and I know that kind of stuff. But I mean, he had 1,500 hits as a catcher. His WAR was 44.8, and he had 158 home runs. I mean, as a catcher, Posada actually was probably just as good offensively as he was. He had more power, for sure, and hit from both the right and left side.
Like 3-time champion, rookie of the year, MVP, won a Gold Glove, won a batting title.
Comeback player of the year twice.
So basically half of the years he played, he won the Silver Slugger as the National League catcher. And then I think kind of maybe the equivalent of that in the American League is your boy, Mauer. Mauer, it comes up every year, the Hall of Fame stuff and who should be in and who should be out.
I think Buster gets in more than over Mauer, in my opinion.
Okay.
Buster had more homers. And he played in San Francisco. I mean, he didn't exactly hit in a homer in a hitter-friendly ballpark. It's cold every damn night there.
Is
it really as bad as everybody says?
It's chilly as shit. It's like, and it's impossible. That's the hardest ball I think I hit my whole career. It bounced over the fence in right center field at night. And I hit a ball that splashed into the water. And the ball I hit to right center there, and I heard JT Snow was laughing at me when I was rounding first. He was laughing at me. He said, "Welcome to whatever they call it, PNC Park back then." PNC or Petco, or what was one of those? It wasn't Petco, but it was like welcome to wherever it was. Welcome to the park, like Death Valley. Because he was trailing me at second. And I was like, man, I hit that ball with every ounce of love handle I've got, and it didn't go over the fence. Okay, so look up Przinski's numbers.
And me, Metal Mike, I mean, Kershaw, no doubt about it, right?
Yeah.
Lefty.
Like, he was the starter, setup guy, and closer for like 6 years.
There's one from Rosca from California.
I love the Expos.
My Angels stink. There's another one here. You going to take the job? Coach Trout and Ohtani, they come calling?
But okay, that's a good example. Another, we talk about the Embiid stuff. Like, what do the Angels do?
No,
like,
well,
you have the best 2 position players and arguably one of the best pitchers, and you still stink. Like, I don't understand that. Like, and you can't do anything about it. Like, what do you do?
They're going to have to make a choice.
You're stuck because you already gave Trout a boatload of money, as he should, because he's the best player on the planet. And now you have this freak show who, like, he's a $400 million player if he's just a pitcher. He's a $400 million player if he's just a hitter. And then he does both. So, like, what do you do? Where's your minor league system? What happened? Where are those guys coming? Is there a wave coming? Because otherwise, what do? You can't have your payroll tied up in 2 people. We've already seen it doesn't work. But you have, showstoppers and 2 players. Like, I have this conversation with my all the time, like this debate. Like, what do you do with Ohtani? And I'm like, well, how long is he gonna start as a pitcher? Like, how many years do you think he can be a starting pitcher? Because the only thing that makes me worry, like, in my opinion, I've always try to think of like him being a reliever, right? You make him available every day. Okay, but how does that screw up his managing that team would be a little challenging because when do you use them, when do you go get them loose? I think you saw that in the WBC. Like, they didn't know when to use, like, they knew when to use him, but like he was running back and forth at bats to the bullpen, and you start doing that every day for 162, it's tough. But like, how long can he physically start a game and then go hit the next day? That's what's the most amazing thing about it. Not only is he successful, that's a given, but like the fact that his body can handle throwing 100 pitches and then doing the work it takes to do as a starting pitcher. Oh, and by the way, you have early hitting at 4 and go take swings and get ready to hit tonight. Right. You know what I mean? That's the amazing part. Because that's what blows me away. It's like, and he's big. He's not like a smaller stature guy. He's wound like he's crazy. Like, that's the part. He's like, not lack of a word, he's a freak. To be able to do that every day and to put his body through that, to be able to perform at a high level like that, it's nothing short of a miracle.
All right, I'm getting the hook, fellas. It's 9:30. Sports Jeopardy's coming up next. I believe Brian Daly is facing somebody. That'll do it for this edition of the Sports Hounds. Thank you, Doug Mankiewicz, Brad Ryer. I'm Rob Brinkman. Until next Monday, peace out, everybody.
Go Noles.